So first and foremost, guys, I just want to say congratulations on TIFF. I really enjoyed watching the movie. And I just wanted to know why you wanted to tell this story or why you wanted to work on this story. So John, I would start with you.
Okay, cool. I did my first feature film was a film called Bunny Chow, which was a slice of life, and was very fortunate to get into the Toronto Film Festival. And because it was, I wanted to do a genre film after that, and one of my favorite genres is caper. Love the original Italian Job, Rafifi. I'm a big fan of those films. So wanted to do a caper film, and I also wanted to do something that would translate to an international audience. And having the Cape Minstrel Carnival as a backdrop, I thought that would merge those two things together beautifully. And as it's worked out, it's been pretty fantastic. So very, very, very happy that it's worked, and I'm glad you like the film. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really nice to see a different culture on screen in the backdrop, and it was, you know, the heist at the end in the third act was like intense and all of that. So it was a lot of fun to just stay with these characters. So Keenan, same question to you. Why did you want to work on this film?
Thanks for having us, Amanda.
Yeah.
Firstly, it was a script. I love the story. Funny story is that I was a part of the initial concept, which was just over 10, maybe 13 years ago. And I think a big draw card for me was our director and writer, John Barker. I'm a big fan of his work. I've always been, and I think it was a part of my dream to work with John. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I grabbed it with both hands. Yeah. Yeah. And also, we're telling a story of
feelings mutual.
Thank you, John. I love you so much. And then also, it's a film set in my hometown, in my city. It's set in Bo Kaap. I was brought up in Bo Kaap. I went to school in Bo Kaap, so it's a community that I know, and it's also a story that's very close to my heart as a person of color. So it just ticked all the boxes for me.
Yeah, I love that. And you got to experience, like, have a, you know, a great experience on set and work with all these awesome people. That's great. And Jack, same question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Keenan and I have been singing the same song about this, is that the opportunity to play with John, and then also to be able to represent a community that is generally quite marginalized and usually poorly represented. So yeah, to be able to tell a story, a love story, a story about family, a story about community, and finding your identity and finding your home is that was special.
Yeah, of course. And I actually really like the fact that you started the film, John, with the funeral scene, because then there's like everyone's introduced. And then there's so many moving parts that kind of, you know, are explored throughout of that. So why did you make that decision to start there and then have that moment at the beginning?
Yeah, it was important for us to even go back a little bit further and do the montage of the chronological timeline of the minstrels, going from, we try to find footage from the 1930s, 1940s, because I wanted to up front just establish that this festival has been around for 200 years. So I wanted the audience to kind of see that, oh, there's a chronological thing from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s to the 60s. And we found this beautiful footage that I think helped to tell that story. And then it was very important to get into the narrative first scene of the film. And I think for Jaques' character, I mean, even at one stage there was because the funeral scene and the after tears scene is very similar. In a way, it's almost a repeat. So at one stage, we wanted to drop the funeral scene, which would have killed me, because I love that there's this beautiful. We didn't have with the budget we had, we didn't have a lot of money to have a jib or a crane. And on the one day we had a crane. It was that day. It was beautiful. So it came off like from quite high, and it came down, and it told the story of minstrels walking and playing music, and it brought us into our 3 stars. And it was such a beautiful setup of the characters and Cape Town. It also showed straight away the first beat that there's this son who was returning, but you could see that he was itching to leave, like he didn't want to be there. And it wasn't, so we want to avoid the exposition, but show an actor who was, who hated being where he was and he wanted to leave straight away. So it was very important. Plus, we also introduced, like you said, we introduced the matriarch, Auntie Val, who's fantastic, and then the young Mila, who's tough. And immediately, the moment the antagonist, Tariq, comes and challenges Jerome, and we also played it in a way that we asked Jerome to kind of be, because he had grown up as a musician, he wasn't ready to, his father had always kind of taken on Tariq, and he wasn't ready for that. So when Tariq approaches him and kind of in his face already says, we thought you'd never return, but here you are now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to stay or are you going to leave? And at that point, Mila comes and stands and says, Tariq, because she's really like, I'm fighting for Jerome here. We want him to stay. So all those beats we had to get in the first scene, and also and the music as well. So, and the fact that the father had passed on, when we were writing the script at some stage, we actually had the father in a scene. And when I was getting a lot of feedback on the script, people were like, no, you have to keep the father alive. There has to be a scene between Jerome and his dad. And for me, I wanted the jumping off point of Jerome coming back to Cape Town and then starting his life and starting the film there. I didn't want to go back to the dad the whole time. So we actually wrote a couple of scenes where the father died of a heart attack at a radio station, which is a horrible scene in script. It's really horrible. I'm glad we didn't shoot that. And then there was a scene where the dad took a trumpet and he smashed the trumpet. And that's when Jaques gets that trumpet, you go back to, you see the dings and the flaws in the trumpet because it was thrown around by the father. So there's a lot to consider in that. But yeah, thanks. I'm glad you liked that opening. It's I think we achieved everything we wanted to.
Oh yeah, it definitely like set the tone for the entire film. And I really liked that. Jaques, for your character, were there any like challenging moments in trying to like develop the character, like any certain scenes that stick out to you that were challenging for you to perform, maybe?
I mean, yeah, I suppose I dealt with this being my first film, and I was pretty insecure for a lot of it, but I'm very, very grateful because there was also a lot of mentorship and support on this. So John really did make me feel like a rock star from the moment I was cast leaving the film.
You are a rock star.
You were so great.
They tell you that often in a awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I suppose that was my big challenge to start off with, was just was owning it. And then what was really cool was discovering the relationship, discovering the friendship between these two men who've grown up together, discovering the relationship with Tisha, Shamila Miller's character, and yeah, it was a joy to do that work. It was cool.
Yeah, and they're like the character dynamics were so strong in this. Like you could feel that bond, which was so great, and you can connect with these characters. So Keenan, same question for you if you had any challenges as well.
I mean, look, I've never been to prison before, so I had to kind of I had to find this energy of
I thought you had.
Is that why you cast me, John?
That's why I cast you.
I think more than a challenge, I think it was sort of like Jaques said, finding these moments, finding the relationships that work, and like really working the texture and the relationships or whatever. So it was, for me, it was more of a growing, learning process. Also working with John and his style. So I mean, if I must be honest, I had the most fun on this film. You know, so more than a challenge, it was the best time. More of a growing experience, and yeah, getting to know Jaques, getting to know Shamila, or these are people I haven't worked with before. So,
Mhm.
and then tapping into mine and Jaques or Jerome's relationship was something, because we'd never met before. I think we met once before.
Yeah.
But I think with John's fantastic casting and his ability to see these relationships working without us even sort of being on screen together before was really something.
Yeah,
That's
and
pretty
to
amazing
build,
We
because
did
I
kind
actually
of
thought,
fall in love with each other a little bit.
If we did, there's a bit of a
yeah,
bromance going on.
definitely.
oh,
And with Shamila and Bronte, I mean,
Yeah.
the four of you were fantastic. I mean, you spent all the time together outside of the set and on set.
Yeah.
It was so fantastic that Shamila was like, when she wasn't on set, when she wasn't shooting, she's supposed to be chilling in a hotel room. She came to set to hang out with you guys. It was like,
Yeah.
I actually thought that you and Jacques were friends before the shoot. I couldn't believe that you met
amazing.
you met each other at my place for the first
At your
time.
house, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was crazy. You two, the chemistry was amazing. We just got very lucky. It was, yeah, we were very lucky.
No, I love it, because if you create like such a strong vibe on set and everyone just connects and clicks, it translates to screen, and that's what you guys did,
Absolutely.
and such a great job. You had mentioned, John, that you had like different you had cut different scenes, but the one thing that I was interested in was why you switched to animation at one point to kind of retell like that specific moment. So why did you make that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was a suburb called District 6 in Cape Town. It was one of the oldest suburbs in Cape Town. Beautiful bohemian type community, beautiful old buildings, and it was a melting pot of different cultures, black, white, Malaysian, Jewish. It was this very harmonious thing that worked, and was flew in the face of the apartheid government, because the apartheid government hated this idea. They wanted to keep everything segregated, keep everyone apart, and so they turned the District 6 into an all-white suburb so that they could kick out anybody that wasn't white. And they moved people from that community. I think there was about 60,000 people. It was a lot of people were all lost their homes, and the tradition of families living there for generations, and they moved them to all parts of Cape Town. And a lot of the people from that community ran and hid into the Bo Kaap, which is a suburb which is just up from that, very, very close. So a lot of the Bo Kaap resembles what would have happened if District 6 hadn't been destroyed. And what the apartheid government did is they bulldozed the entire place. And that was in the 60s and 70s. And still to this day, there's no buildings being put back on that land. So it's a really ugly reminder of apartheid. And it's right in the center of Cape Town. And it's a really sad reminder of what happened there. So I thought, because the minstrels used to, when the Minstrel Carnival kicked off, it would always start in District 6. So all the minstrels would line up in the streets. There's all these beautiful black and white pictures of the minstrels from the 50s and the 40s. So the home of the minstrels is actually in District 6. So as part of a way of telling the audience that this wasn't only just, this gentrification thing wasn't only happening in the Bo Kaap, but it's been happening for like generations, 60 years. It was so important to create that animation of how District 6 looked and the vibe, and that Auntie Val was there. And like for me, Jerome's father would have, Gershwin, he would have played in that area. He would have played jazz with Hugh Masekela. Auntie Val would have been a young lady in that area. They would have jeweled. They would have had a great time. So it was a beautiful thing. It was so important to keep that animation of District 6 there.
Yeah, and it's just so rich in like history, and the way that you can play around with animation you can't really do in live action. So it was like a really nice touch that you put that in there. And speaking of generations and legacy in this film, do you think that the younger generations have a completely different perspective on history, and that's why it's hard to kind of like connect with their parents and grandparents as like even a form of identity? Do you think that it's just completely different in how they look at it?
I think
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jacques.
Yeah, whoever. Yeah, of course, Jacques. Yeah.
No, I mean, for me, that was a lot of the character's journey in this. Is that I think that's another one of the narratives within the story is that the split between the history and someone and legacy that has been laid out for you, a path to follow, and that of an individual, a young person wanting to forge their own and to find their own way. And I think what's interesting is that I think there's a lot of communities, there's a lot of people within South Africa, young people right now, people of color even, that don't know this history, that don't know that they come out of something. And so yeah, so I think there's something really, really special again about being able to tell this story.
Yeah. No, for sure. And you guys did a great job with it, because I learned so much while watching it, and hopefully audiences feel the same. And Keenan, same question for you, how younger generations look at this history and how they, they adapt like their identity and form their own identity.
Well, there's definitely been a sort of movement with the younger generation that, because District 6 was, it happened such a long time ago, we live in this age where people have moved out, and so that they lost this connection to the city and what it represented at that time. So there's definitely a disconnect. But at the same time, while saying that, while we were shooting the film, we also realized that there's another part of this community, there's the younger generation who is still connected to it. I mean, while we were shooting the sort of carnival scenes, there were so many kids, so many youngsters that came, and this is basically their lives, because what happens with the minstrels, they plan this carnival from year to year. So the minute it starts and ends, they start preparing for the next year. And so there is definitely a family legacy and a timeline that runs through. So as well, while people are disconnected, they are still connected, because I think the families still keep it alive. They're part of the carnival, they're part of the setup. So yeah, it's kind of twofold, and I think a film like this would definitely remind them of it. There's definitely this feeling of nostalgia, and kind of taking back what used to be ours,
Yeah. And you're passing it down, and then like you're
it down,
educating.
exactly.
Yeah, it's great that happens. And John, if you wanted to add anything to this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the guys are right. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, because the District 6 was destroyed, we've lost so much rich potential. I always said that the casting of Jerome, Keenan, Shamila, and Bronte, the four of them, that for me, they always felt like they would be the younger generation that would have lived in District 6 at the moment. Like, if District 6 hadn't been destroyed, the way they look and the way they behave and how they function in this world as musicians and artists, we unfortunately lost such a beautiful like artist and a future that was kind of taken away by destroying that. So it was very important for us to link Jerome's character with Auntie Val. Auntie Val was always telling the story. That's why I wanted her to narrate. We had a couple of narrators in there. I didn't just want one narrator, but I thought it was beautiful that in that District 6 animation piece that she tells the story. So Jerome would have known these stories, but she kind of tells that in a beautiful, in a verbal storytelling way of the stories that have been passed down, because these stories weren't written down, but they were passed on from her fathers and her forefathers to her, and that she was just reminding Jerome in that moment that this is your history. This is what your father did. Your father did some terrible things in your eyes, but what you didn't realize, it was during apartheid. So he was doing whatever he had to do. He was crossing the line. He was breaking the law, but don't be a little shithead. Don't judge your father like that, because you're still here and the club is still there in the Bo Kaap. So it was amazing to link the generations. And I think Auntie Val is obviously the matriarch, and she's the puppeteer. She's actually the one who devised all these things. She like in the backstory, when Jerome comes to Cape Town, she told everybody. She said to Keenan, he's coming out. We're making sure that Jerome is picking him up. When he gets here, I'm giving him the deed. We are making sure that that kid is not going back to Joburg. So she's the one that plays all of she's the puppeteer. And I think as the older generation, she gives the kids a kind of like a wake up, and she reminds them that, she was rock and roll, and she smokes a few blunts and smokes a few joints and was a bit of a wild woman. And I love that,
No, I loved it too. I love that it was her. It was a very nice touch, that narration, and you can just see that she holds everyone together, and it's beautiful. So lastly, what I wanted to ask, what did you learn about yourself throughout this process, and have you changed in any way, John?
Oh, it's the only thing. Like I don't think I have any real skills. I think they're going to put on my tombstone that he was just persistent. That's all. I just didn't stop. Like Keenan will laugh because like I said, like Keenan every 6 months he'd go, John, are we making the film? I go, yeah, of course we're making the film. It's just waiting for money. So the only thing I know is that the cool thing is that we just kept going and we made the film, and it's so beautiful to have people like Keenan and even Jaques, who came on quite late, but Shamila, who's been around for 4 years, Abdullah Ahmad Adams, who's been around for 13 years, Lukman Adams, who composed the music, beautiful, he's been around since we shot 13 years ago. So I've taken away that there's these fantastic, talented musicians and actors who love making film, and I love making films. So I just found such a fantastic group of people, and I'm so happy that we actually made the film. So yeah,
I love it. I love it. And Jaques, same question for you. What did you learn about yourself, and if you changed at all throughout this process?
Absolutely. For me, like I said earlier, just the confidence to be able to know, to be able to trust the work, trust the process, trust the people around you. It's been incredibly satisfying, and the rewarding part is that you carry that into all spheres of your life. So I am grateful.
No, that's great. That's great. And Keenan, same question for you as well.
Yeah, I think I've definitely grown. I've grown some gray hairs, and no, like John.
Is that me?
But it's definitely no, it's definitely been a sort of growing experience for me. Also, just watching John as a filmmaker with all these other films, and then watching him work on this film specifically, his temperament and the way he approaches roles and actors, and his method of working. So it was great to see that as a young actor. Stop laughing, John. And it's definitely given me the opportunity to sort of go, okay, I want to focus a lot of my work as an actor. I definitely want to focus on screen work. I mean, I love theater, I love all of that, but I'm just the focus for me has become a lot more, streamlined. So it's definitely been a growing experience for me.
Yeah, that's great. You guys have such a great, vibe together, and like this interview has been awesome. So thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Congratulations again on the film, and I hope you guys have a wonderful festival, because I'm just excited for everyone to watch this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. Great talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great talking to you guys. Have a wonderful day.